You imagine waking up tomorrow morning with $1 billion in your checking account and assume all your problems will vanish in a single day. In his 1947 novella, The Pearl, John Steinbeck describes a poor pearl diver named Kino who finds a massive, perfect pearl in the dark ocean. He holds the heavy, glowing sphere in his calloused hand.
He walks back to his quiet village, expecting absolute joy and celebration from his neighbors. The news of the massive pearl spreads through the dirt streets before he even reaches his small wooden hut. The doctor who refused to treat his sick son appears at his door with a warm smile and fake medicine. The neighbors look at the pearl with dark, hungry eyes in the shadows.
The massive wealth does not solve his problems. It turns his entire world into a hostile environment where every smile is a calculated trap. When you acquire extreme wealth at a young age, your human relationships undergo a sudden and violent mutation. The people who loved you yesterday view you as a walking solution to their own financial failures. They stop seeing your human face and only see the heavy vault door. You felt a tiny fraction of this mutation last year when you received a small holiday bonus and bought a round of drinks. A friend joked that you should pay for their vacation since you were rich. The joke carried a heavy edge of bitter resentment. You paid the bill and felt a cold distance open between you and the table. Wealth buys absolute, profound loneliness.
Surviving the betrayal of your closest friends hurts, but the paranoia forces you to alter your physical geography. In his year 121 text, The 12 Caesars, the historian Suetonius describes the Roman Emperor Tiberius acquiring absolute global power. Tiberius realizes that ruling the massive empire makes him a prime target for assassination by his own inner circle. He abandons the loud capital city and retreats to a rocky island in the sea.
He builds a massive stone palace on the edge of a steep cliff where he can see any approaching ship from miles away. He surrounds himself with armed guards and refuses to eat food prepared by anyone except his most trusted servant. He possesses the heavy power to buy anything on the planet, but he cannot walk through a public market without fearing a knife in the back.
At 25, the billionaire realizes they can never again walk into a crowded bar or sit in a public park to read a book. The massive number attached to your name attracts desperate people who want to sue you, rob you, or hurt your family for a heavy ransom. You must hire aggressive men in dark suits to follow you everywhere. You trade the freedom of the open city for a mobile prison. You experienced a mild form of this physical anxiety when you walked through a dark parking lot holding a heavy envelope of cash. You looked over your shoulder and gripped your keys because you knew the paper made you a target. The young titan lives in that exact state of high alert every single second of the day. The fear never stops ringing in their ears. The gold builds the cage. Locking the heavy gates keeps the physical predators out, but the absolute silence inside the compound triggers a much darker psychological rot. In his 1933 book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Carl Jung describes the profound crisis that hits successful men when they reach middle age. A patient spends 30 years climbing the heavy corporate ladder and building a massive corporate fortune. He reaches the top and stops moving.
He sits in his massive leather chair and stares at the wall, paralyzed by the lack of future struggle. Jung notes that the human brain requires a heavy burden to push against to generate meaning. When you remove the struggle for survival, the mind turns inward and begins to eat itself. The patient falls into a deep depression because he has nothing left to conquer in the physical world.
Becoming a billionaire at 25 accelerates this psychological death by removing the friction of human existence before your brain is fully formed. You possess the heavy resources to buy any experience, travel to any country, and consume any pleasure. The brain adapts to the massive dopamine hits, and flying on a private jet feels like riding a city bus. Nothing excites you because nothing is out of your reach.
You felt this exact void last month when you finished a massive project that consumed your life for an entire year. You woke up the next morning expecting to feel pure joy and ultimate relief. Instead, you stared at the ceiling and felt empty because the heavy mission was over. The young billionaire wakes up to that exact crushing emptiness every single morning. The cure is the disease.
Staring into the void of an empty future forces you to realize that the massive pile of paper requires constant, violent feeding. In her 1818 novel, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley describes an ambitious scientist who pieces together a massive creature in a dark laboratory. He wants to conquer death and achieve absolute glory among his peers. He applies the spark of life and watches the heavy monster open its yellow eyes in the cold room.
The scientist flees in absolute terror as the massive creation stands up and demands his full attention. The creature stalks the scientist across the frozen ice, destroying his quiet life. The scientist realizes he does not control the heavy monster he built with his own hands. The monster dictates every move he makes and forces him to march into the freezing wasteland. He built a master he cannot escape.
The young billionaire does not sit on a beach drinking expensive cocktails while the money manages itself in the dark. A massive fortune is a heavy, living organism that requires a massive army of accountants, lawyers, and wealth managers to keep it alive. You wake up and spend 12 hours a day in sterile boardrooms, fighting off hostile lawsuits and complex tax audits. You are the highest paid employee of your own money.
You tasted this exact trap when you bought your first expensive car and realized the maintenance and insurance costs consumed your entire surplus. You worked extra shifts just to keep the heavy metal machine running on the road. The vehicle dictated your schedule and forced you to trade your precious time for expensive parts. The billionaire is chained to a machine 1,000,000 times larger. The creator serves the creation.
Serving the heavy gold machine isolates you from the physical world, but it also destroys your ability to perceive basic truth. In his 1837 tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, Hans Christian Andersen describes a powerful ruler obsessed with expensive garments. Two weavers arrive and promise to make a heavy suit, visible only to intelligent people. They dress the emperor in nothing but thin air. He walks naked into the cold street.
The massive crowd cheers for the beautiful fabric because they are terrified of appearing stupid or losing the favor of the crown. A single child points a finger and screams that the emperor is naked in the cold wind. The ruler shivers, but continues walking because his heavy ego refuses to admit he was fooled by the slick weavers. His power isolates him from the cold physical reality of the street. When you hold $1 billion at 25, every person in your inner circle becomes a terrified peasant, praising your invisible clothes. No one tells you the harsh truth because they want a piece of your massive capital. If you propose a terrible business idea, your advisors applaud your genius. They filter the physical world to keep you happy, leaving you blind to the sharp edges of reality. You felt this artificial agreement last week when your boss proposed a terrible idea during a morning meeting. You knew the plan would fail, but you nodded your head and smiled because you needed the heavy bi-weekly paycheck. You lied to protect your own immediate financial survival. The billionaire lives in a massive echo chamber built entirely of those exact desperate lies. Truth vanishes in the gold. Living in a room full of mirrors distorts your business decisions, but it breaks your ability to trust a romantic partner. In his 1843 philosophical text, Either Or, Soren Kierkegaard tells the story of a wealthy king
who falls in love with a poor maiden. The king wants to marry her, but he realizes a dark, unshakable problem. If he rides into her dirt village wearing a heavy gold crown, she will accept him out of awe and fear. The king decides to strip off his expensive robes and dress as a common peasant to win her heart. He understands that genuine human love requires absolute equality and mutual vulnerability. The young billionaire cannot take off the heavy crown. The entire world knows the exact amount of paper money sitting in your massive vault. You attract beautiful partners who have been trained to hunt for heavy financial security.
You spend your evenings sitting across from stunning people in expensive restaurants, but a dark voice whispers in the back of your mind. You wonder if they would still hold your hand if the massive stock portfolio vanished tomorrow. You test them with small traps, looking for a crack in their perfect affection. The wealth removes your ability to surrender to another human being without absolute extreme paranoia. You experienced a tiny shadow of this doubt when you started dating someone who asked too many questions about your salary. You felt a cold wall go up in your chest as you calculated their true intentions. You guarded your wallet and lost the romantic spark in a single moment. The young titan lives behind that massive cold wall every single night. Love requires an empty hand. The cold wall destroys your romantic life, and it leaves you desperate to find meaning by building a massive historical legacy. In his 1817 poem, Ozymandias, Percy B. Shelley describes a traveler walking through a vast, empty desert. The traveler finds two massive stone. There is nothing else remaining but flat sand stretching into the dark horizon. The massive empire the king built was erased by the brutal friction of deep time. The young billionaire looks at their massive bank account and decides to build a heavy legacy to conquer death. They buy massive technology companies or launch metal rockets into the dark sky. They want the public to carve their name into the granite. They burn their remaining biological energy trying to force the chaotic world to remember their face. They sacrifice their quiet mornings and their physical health to manage a massive global footprint. They forget that in 100 years, their heavy corporations will be bankrupt and their names will be a footnote in a dusty book. They trade the peace of the present moment for a fake future monument.
You fell into this ego trap yesterday when you argued with a stranger on the internet about a trivial subject. You needed to win the argument to prove your massive intellectual superiority to an invisible audience. You wasted your finite pulse on a digital ghost that forgot you the moment you logged off. The Titan wastes their entire life building a heavier version of that exact same ghost. Legacy is a massive lie.
The financial matrix sells you the dream of early wealth to keep you working long hours in the corporate machine. The brutal reality of extreme early success is a life of profound isolation, constant physical paranoia, and a total loss of human purpose. The people who survive this heavy transition learn to separate their biological identity from the massive numbers sitting on the glowing screen. They walk away from the heavy machine. The historical operators shared their hidden blueprints with those brave enough to step into the absolute dark. Something on this screen is the modern version of that exact ancient act of seeking the forbidden knowledge today. Every massive financial illusion in your life followed from a choice made without complete structural vision. This is one of those crucial moments where you choose your heavy path. You are now on the side that sees.